Tonight I want to touch on an event that happened near me in my neck of the woods back in 2009. This is shortly after I returned home from Afghanistan, actually, in the year 2009. I wasn't even really fully awake at that point, still bought most of the lies, the war on terror lies, not all of them. I mean, I was starting to finally crack, and then I finally, years later, opened my eyes to what's going on. But I'm getting off subject here. I want to talk about this flight 3407. This plane, this passenger plane, crashed into a man's house in Clarence, New York, and this plane was said to have contained a woman named Beverly Eckert. Beverly Eckert was, she was presented as a 9/11 truther. She was presented as a widow of a 9/11 victim that was reported to be in one of the towers when it was on fire. Never read into her husband's story before, never really looked too deep into her, until a few years ago, especially lately because the anniversary of this just happened, so it was on the mainstream news. Her family was talking about the plane crash, and it reminded me of it because I thought this event was suspicious. So supposedly Beverly Eckert was a widow of a 9/11 victim, and she was supposedly an avid 9/11 truther. But then reading her actual story from her husband, which you can find online, and then looking deeper into Beverly Eckert, things start to get more weird. Beverly Eckert, a couple days prior, met with Obama. Supposedly, she was one of the last widows from 9/11 victims she was one of the last ones, or the last one, that refused to take a settlement from the government. This is the narrative that was fed to us. So you say, so Eckert met with Obama a couple days prior, and then her plane crashed into a house, killing her and everyone on board and a guy on the ground. Weird. You start to think, was Beverly Eckert, taken out? Was she being too outspoken? Was she seriously exposing the government for the truth of 9/11? I don't know. But if you become a hindrance in any way, shape, or form to the U.S. government, if you become an annoyance to them or a liability to them, and they decide to book you a flight, I would advise against taking that flight. Just by looking at the CIA's track record alone, the CIA and Mossad's public track record of assassination by flight disaster, you would know what I'm talking about. But let's continue on. Now, the man's house that it crashed into was a man named Douglas Walensky. Not much is mentioned about Walensky. Walensky was a Vietnam veteran and an engineer. This plane supposedly was crashed into his house, killing only him and not damaging any other house in the neighborhood, just that house. His wife and daughter were able to escape, and their story sounds crazy too. The wife said she was in the next room and heard the plane crash through the house and ran out. I'll leave a link for that story, but it sounds insane. But let's take a look at the maneuver of this plane. Suppose it's this routine flight from Newark to Buffalo. 17-mile-an-hour winds. It's like nothing. You could barely fly a kite in 17-mile-an-hour winds. So let's take a look at this flight simulation of how they said this happened.
10:20 p.m. Thursday, February the 12th, 2009. After a short 52-minute trip from Newark, New Jersey, Continental Airlines Flight 3407, operated by Colgan Air, is on final approach into Buffalo Niagara International. And what appears to be a routine flight for this crew of 4 is about to end in a horrific tragedy for 50 souls, including one on the ground.
Colgan 3407, turn left heading 310.
Left heading 310, Colgan 3407.
Freezing temperature added with a mix of precipitation have been forecasted for that evening in Buffalo, New York. At the controls is 47-year-old pilot Marvin Renslow, a pilot with over 3,379 hours of flight time, with a sterling reputation. Renslow's co-pilot, Rebecca Lynn Shaw, at 24, recently graduated from Central Washington University with a degree in aeronautical science, and has flown over 2,244 hours. Something would happen on board that Bombardier Dash 8 Q400 that would send shudders through the world of aviation and beyond. For 25 seconds, the aircraft would struggle to regain control, during which the crew would make no emergency declaration. It rapidly lost altitude and then crashed into a private home at 6038 Long Street in Clarence Center, New York, 5 miles short of the runway, during which the crew would make no emergency declaration.
This corkscrew maneuver and this nosedive right into this house. I mean, this is a 1 in a million chance for this just to nosedive perfectly into that one house and not harm any other houses or skid anywhere, because it was a perfect nosedive. That's a 1 in a million, folks. Probably less than 1 in a million.
It's like right, you know where Kevin's son used to live, the Union?
Colgan 3407, Buffalo. Colgan 4407, Buffalo approach, good evening, Buffalo, 10 minutes 2980, plan ILS approach runway 23.
2980 and ILS 23, Colgan 3407.
Colgan 3407, proceed direct Traba. Colgan 3407, descend and maintain 6000.
07.
Colgan 3407, descend and maintain 5000.
5000, Colgan 3407.
Colgan 3407, descend and maintain 4000. Colgan 3407, descend and maintain 2300.
07.
Colgan 3407, turn left heading 330.
Left heading 330, Colgan 3407.
Colgan 3407, 3 miles from Clump, turn left heading 260, maintain 2300 to establish localized and clear out, approach runway 23.
Left 260, 2300 to established and cleared out, 23 approach, Colgan 3407.
Colgan 3407, contact tower 120.5, have a good night.
3407.
Colgan 3407, approach. Colgan 3407, Buffalo. Colgan 3407, approach. Delta 1998, look off to the right side about 5 miles for a Dash 8. Should be 2300. Do you see anything there?
Negative, Delta 1998. We're just in the bottoms and nothing on the TCAS.
Colgan 3407, Buffalo. Colgan 3407, Buffalo Tower, how do you hear? And let us some ground communication. You need to talk to somebody at least 5 miles northeast. Okay, possibly Clarence. That area right in there, Akron area. Either state police or sheriff's department need to find out if anything is on the ground. This aircraft was 5 miles out, and all of a sudden we have no response to that aircraft. All I can tell you is there's an aircraft over the marker, and we're not talking to him now. Double 5, I'll have to get right back to you, sir. Apparently we have an emergency, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, for all aircraft this frequency, we did have a Dash 8 over the marker that didn't make the airport. He appears to be about 5 miles away from the airport. For Delta 1998, I'm going to bring you in, sir, on the approach. If you could just give me a pyre up when you get to 2300, and if you have any problem with the localizer or anything, let me know. However, we're showing it all in the green here. Cactus 1452, thanks for your help. I appreciate it. Contact tower 120.5.
Sorry for Cactus. Did you find Colgan?
Unfortunately, they said he went down about right over the marker clump.
Tower Cactus 1452 is coming up on Clump, and we saw the ground. You guys know what's going on?
Kex 1452, Buffalo Tower, winds are 26014, runway 23, clear lane. Yes, sir, we are aware.
Hey.
Colgan 3268, approach. Sir, I need you to prepare yourself. Company Dash 8 inbound, we think went down over the outer marker. We're not sure why. I'm not sure if you want to try the approach. Since then, we've had 4 aircraft going, and they were all jets.
3268?
Roger, sir. It was another Dash 8 approximately 15 minutes ago, and we're not sure why.
Can you clarify the Dash 8? What do you mean it went down?
He didn't make the airport. He was cleared for the approach. He went over the tower. He didn't call the tower. Basically, he X'd out on his mode C, and we couldn't get a hold of him in his report. He's went down about 5 miles northwest of the airport.
Yeah, we'll shoot the approach, though.
Colgan 3268, roger. There have been 4 planes shooting approach since then. So just to let you know, Colgan 3268, descending your discretion, maintain 3,500. Aircraft do report once they get to about 2,300, they're out of any kind of icing.
All right, 3,500 for Colgan 3268.
So here's where the story gets really weird. So the only family, out of all the victims from this incident, the only family that was pursuing charges and pursuing an investigation into this event was the Walensky family, the house that it smashed into. But that's the only family that was pursuing an investigation with the government. They hired 2 attorneys and they die in a separate plane crash shortly thereafter. Both of these attorneys on a separate flight. So you'd have to be a real coincidence theorist to think that's I mean, it's less than 1 in a million, 10 million chance. So obviously something fishy is going on. Part of me wants to think that Walensky, since he's a Vietnam veteran, and interestingly enough, even though you can't find much about Walensky online, I'm interested to see if I can look at his DD-214. I don't know if that's public record or not. I'm going to look into that. But Walensky was a combat veteran, a Vietnam veteran, and in one of his obituaries, it mentioned that he enjoyed visiting history classes at high schools and colleges, speaking as a veteran. And I can tell you right now, if you're a veteran and you're awake to the truth, and you're spreading the truth, and you're poking the beast with a stick, they don't like that. They will target you. I don't know if there was a lot of significance with that with Walensky. I'm just speculating. But if this man is genuinely a combat veteran and a Vietnam veteran, he deserves our respect, and he is my brother. Even though we were all lied to about every war all of us were in. If he's the real deal, he's my brother. I'm just seeking for the truth. I want the truth. So Walensky could have been poking the beast a little bit too much. None of us can know for sure. But the fact of these 2 other Buffalo attorneys being taken out in a separate plane crash, it's way too much to be a coincidence. What's going on here? I mean, a government that shows us this shit and says planes crash into the Pentagon without even skimming the lawn after crashing through 5 lampposts without even losing course, or completely ripping the wings off before it even got there. None of us know exactly what happened that day, but I do know for a fact that everything the government tells us, how everything went down, is complete bullshit. They lied to you about everything. But there's way too many impossible coincidences with this crash, these two crashes. We have the last surviving 9/11 widow who wouldn't accept a settlement from the government die in a plane crash just days after the U.S. government books her this flight. And then the only two attorneys looking into this case and investigating it died in a separate plane crash just a short time after their plane exploded and crashed into the ground. Now, for those of you who still don't know that 9/11 was an inside job, it was a Mossad job and a CIA job. For those of you who don't know that yet, let me share a little tidbit of true history that you don't know about. The comptroller of the Pentagon during September 11th was a man named Rabbi Dov Zakheim. Mr. Zakheim here is the CEO of SPS International and SPC, Systems Planning Corporation. SPS and SPC specialize in remote control airplane technology. They have, and they've been testing and manufacturing technology to take control of commercial and military aircraft that are in the sky mid-flight by remote control, with the capability to land them or crash them wherever they want by remote control. This technology already existed during 9/11. This technology could have prevented 9/11 if it actually happened the way they said it did. But obviously it didn't, and this is even more proof that it didn't. If you want to learn more about that, read my blog and learn about Zakheim and SPS and SPC International. But even in the CIA's own words, airline disasters are a surefire way of assassination. They mean that. Also, read about Pete Zalewski. I wrote a little piece about him on my blog as well. Pete Zalewski was responsible for Egypt Air Flight 990's crash. He was also in charge of both flight control tower mishaps that happened on 9/11. But the Egypt Air Flight 990, this Mossad agent responsible for that aircraft, crashed it, killing dozens of high-ranking officers. And just coincidentally, we had the same Mossad agent in charge of both mishaps on 9/11, Pete Zalewski. You got to be a real coincidence theorist to think that there's nothing strange about any of this. One thing that I did want to mention that I thought was interesting that popped into my head was a few days after 9/11, Bush mentioned, he made a speech at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, and he talked about new security measures that they'd be taking right after 9/11, deploying the National Guard to train stations and airports, increasing air marshals, blah, blah, blah. But he mentioned experimenting with technology capable of taking over airplanes by remote control. A few days after 9/11, he announces this. We already know that they've had this technology for many years already. Back in the 60s, NASA was taking off commercial airliners by remote control, successfully taking them off, flying them and landing them, and crash landing them since the 60s. We also know that the comptroller of the Pentagon during 9/11, Rabbi Dov Zakheim, CEO of SPS and SPC, already had technology to do this and to take any airplane in the sky over by remote. But Bush is just playing stupid here and acting like they don't have anything like that. They're not capable of doing it. See how they play you? They already have that capability. They've been using it to kill people. Not to save people, but to kill people. And all these types of Mossad agents and dual national traitors, Zionist extremists in the United States government that were in charge of 9/11 are still in charge today, and they're still walking free. Anybody who gets in their way, they take them out. Period. You need to learn about this parasite in this nation. First, you need to learn the truth of 9/11. Please, I highly urge you to read my blog. I'll list it at the end of this video. This is just cryptic messaging from Puppet Bush. Because they've always had it. And Bush knew that already. But even more unsettling to me, and probably to anybody else with just basic knowledge of occult symbology, is that they decided to use a rising phoenix for the memorial. It's just another form of blatant mockery. Just like they used this symbol of the rising phoenix on the guidon in my last unit in Afghanistan, Task Force Phoenix, they call that. That's the constellation of Orion, by the way, in my old unit patch. Orion is also known as Osiris. Osiris being the father deity of the unholy trinity. But they use the rising phoenix. The New World Order loves this symbol. Represents the phoenix coming out of the ashes, the New World Order being born. Born out of chaos to bring order. Order out of chaos. The psychopaths who control this world do not care for human life. They have no compassion whatsoever. They don't have sympathy. They don't have morals like a normal person because they're not human. They don't have a conscience like you. But these are the people who rule over the world today. And they leave their fingerprints on everything they do because they feel like it gives them more spiritual power over you. Once you can recognize this, it's up to you to expose them.